Morning sunlight spills across my land, turning the rolling fields of golden grass into a sea of fire. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth, hay, and the faint musk of livestock. I take a deep breath, letting the familiar peace settle in my bones. This land, 5 acres of open sky, a sturdy red barn, and a modest farmhouse, is my slice of freedom, passed down from my grandfather. Out here, away from the perfectly manicured lawns and suffocating rules of the HOA-run neighborhood down the road, I set my own pace. I don't answer to community guidelines or arbitrary bylaws. My goats roam freely. My chickens cluck happily in their coop. My barn, weathered but strong, stands as a testament to the hard work of 3 generations. And yet, that peace has been feeling fragile lately. It started small. A few sideways glances from my HOA-affiliated neighbors when I drove into town. Karen Wilcox, the HOA president, suddenly introducing herself at the farmer's market, her smile too polished, her questions about my property too pointed. Then came the letters. At first, they were just reminders about keeping the community aesthetically pleasing. Then, one morning, I found a letter tucked under my doormat. Your barn is an eyesore. Have you considered tearing it down for a more suitable structure? I should have ignored it, but something about the phrasing gnawed at me. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning. That warning solidifies when I see her standing at my fence. Karen Wilcox, in her spotless beige slacks and iron blouse, clutching a leather-bound notebook as if she's preparing to issue citations. I watch from my porch, gripping my coffee mug a little tighter. She doesn't belong here. Not on my land. I take my time walking up to her. Can I help you? She beams, thin-lipped and fake. Malcolm. Lovely to see you. I was just admiring your property. Her eyes flick toward the barn. I already don't like where this is going. It's quite rustic, she continues. But it could be so much more with a little community involvement. I raise an eyebrow. Community. Oh yes. The HOA board has been discussing potential shared spaces, and your barn is in such a prime location. There it is. I take a slow breath, keeping my voice level. Karen, my property isn't part of the HOA. Her smile doesn't falter. Well, actually, we've recently reviewed property boundaries, and there may be some overlap. I'd love to discuss how we can make this work for everyone. The way she says everyone, I know she doesn't mean me. I stare her down, jaw tight. My barn isn't going anywhere. Her smile tightens. Let's not be difficult, Malcolm. Something about the way she says difficult makes my stomach turn. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. The first real sign of trouble comes 3 days later. I'm out by the barn, shoveling feed for my chickens, when I hear voices, muted but unmistakably close. I straighten, wiping sweat from my brow, and catch movement beyond the wooden fence that marks my property line. Karen Wilcox stands with 2 men in polo shirts, clipboards in hand. They're surveying my land like it's already theirs. I step forward, boots crunching on gravel. Something I can help you with? Karen turns, her expression all sugary innocence. Oh, Malcolm. We were just reviewing some technicalities. She gestures vaguely to the clipboard in one of the men's hands. I fold my arms. On my property. She gives a light laugh, as if I'm a child misunderstanding something obvious. Well, potentially shared property. You see, after reviewing some very interesting zoning records, we noticed that part of your barn might actually fall under the HOA's jurisdiction. I blink. That's not possible. One of the clipboard guys, a wiry man with graying hair, clears his throat. It appears that due to an old zoning error, a portion of your property was never properly registered as separate from the HOA's designated community areas. My gut tightens. That's ridiculous. My grandfather built this barn before the HOA even existed. Karen tilts her head, smiling as if I'd just proved her point. Exactly. And sometimes these little oversights happen. But don't worry, Malcolm. We're more than happy to help you transition. Transition? I glance at the clipboard, but they keep it angled away, shielding whatever paperwork they're working with. My skin prickles. They're up to something. You need to leave, I say, keeping my voice steady. Karen's smile thins.
Now.
There's no need to be hostile. I take a step closer. You're trespassing. She exhales sharply through her nose, then motions for the men to follow her. Very well. But don't be surprised if we follow up formally. With that, they turn and walk away, but the tension lingers in the air like a storm waiting to break. That night, I do my own research. I dig through property records, pulling up every document my grandfather ever signed. There's nothing linking my land to the HOA. So, what the hell is Karen playing at? The next morning, I wake to find a bright yellow envelope taped to my barn door. I rip it open. Notice of community reclamation. My pulse pounds as I read the fine print. The HOA claims that a boundary discrepancy means my barn qualifies as a shared community structure. I have 7 days to either remove my belongings or face fines, legal action, and, if necessary, demolition. My fists clench. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a power move. And Karen Wilcox just declared war. The next morning, I storm into the HOA office, the notice of community reclamation crumpled in my fist. Karen Wilcox sits behind a polished oak desk, sipping coffee like she hasn't just declared war on my land. A silver plaque reading President gleams beside a stack of pristine folders. She barely looks up. Malcolm. What a surprise. I slap the letter onto her desk. Care to explain this? Karen picks it up delicately, scanning it with mock concern.
Oh dear.
Looks like the legal department moved faster than expected. She sighs, setting it aside. I was hoping we could have a friendly conversation before this became official. My jaw tightens. Cut the act, Karen. You and I both know my barn isn't part of the HOA. My land has been in my family for generations. She clasps her hands together. That's just the thing, Malcolm. Zoning laws evolve. And based on the latest assessments, we have grounds to reclaim shared community spaces. I glare. It's not a shared space. Her lips curl into a condescending smile. Not yet. I exhale slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. I've checked the records. My property line is not under your jurisdiction. Karen's expression doesn't change, but I see the flicker of irritation in her eyes. That's your interpretation. She leans forward, but our lawyers disagree. There it is. The power move. I stare at her, my pulse hammering. This is theft. She tilts her head. No, Malcolm. This is progress. And frankly, it would be unwise to fight it. You wouldn't want to come off as combative. That word, combative, a thinly veiled threat. A reminder that people like me don't get the benefit of the doubt when we push back. I force myself to smile. You're making a mistake, Karen. She just beams. I don't think so. I need backup. That night, I call my lawyer cousin Jalen. He's been fighting HOA overreach cases for years. This is textbook land grabbing, he says after reviewing the documents. They're hoping you won't push back, so they can set a precedent. What do we do? I ask. First, we fight the zoning claim. Second, we make this loud. Jalen sends me official counterclaims and drafts a cease and desist letter. Meanwhile, I rally support. I talk to old neighbors, people who've lived here long before the HOA took over. They tell me about other homeowners, mostly Black and Latino, who've mysteriously lost property to zoning technicalities. Patterns emerge. This isn't just about me. 2 days later, Karen escalates. I wake up to a construction crew parked in front of my barn. A man in a neon vest steps forward, holding a clipboard. HOA ordered a structural evaluation, he says. They're planning renovations. My blood runs cold. Renovations? We're assessing the barn for conversion. If it's deemed unstable, we'll schedule demolition. I see red. This is how they do it. They don't take the land outright. They evaluate. They find issues. Then they bulldoze before anyone can stop them. Karen stands a few feet away, watching with satisfaction. I march up to her. Get them off my property. She smirks. I'm afraid the process has already started. People are gathering now. Some neighbors step outside to watch. Others whisper from their porches. "You're trespassing," I say, my voice low. "I'll have you arrested." Karen laughs. "For following proper procedures?" "Please, Malcolm. Let's not get aggressive." There it is again. Aggressive. Combative. Difficult. I take a slow breath. This isn't over. Her smirk doesn't waver. "Oh, I know." But she has no idea what's coming. The next morning, I wake up to the sound of power tools. I throw on my boots and storm outside, my heart hammering. A bulldozer is parked in front of my barn. Construction workers in HOA-branded vests mill around, measuring, marking the ground, preparing. Karen Wilcox stands beside them, clipboard in hand, watching like a queen surveying her domain. She turns at the sound of my footsteps, her expression a mix of amusement and condescension. Malcolm," she says, like she's greeting an old friend. "Right on time." I clench my fists. "What the hell is this?" She sighs dramatically. "You were given ample notice. The HOA has officially begun repurposing this community structure." She gestures toward the workers. "We'll be converting it into a multi-purpose storage facility. Think of all the wonderful uses. Seasonal decorations, landscaping equipment, maybe even a food pantry." I glare. "You mean stealing my land?" She shakes her head, all fake sympathy. "Oh, Malcolm. This resistance isn't helping your case. If you had simply cooperated, you could have had a say in the design." My skin prickles. Cooperate? She wants me to just hand over my family's land, smile, and nod while they erase everything we built?
Not a damn chance.
Karen turns to the construction foreman. "Proceed with the assessment." The man nods and steps toward the barn door. I step in front of him. The crew hesitates. Karen's jaw tightens. "Malcolm, step aside."
Now.
A small crowd has gathered along the fence, neighbors watching. Some look uncomfortable, whispering to each other. Others just look curious, like they're waiting to see how this plays out. Karen sees them too, and she loves it. She raises her voice, making sure they hear. "This is a legal HOA matter. I understand this is emotional for you, Malcolm, but rules are rules." I see the smugness in her eyes. She thinks she's won. She thinks I'll back down. I take a slow breath. Then I pull out my phone. "Actually, Karen," I say, voice steady, "I'd love for everyone to hear the real rules." I hit play. Her voice fills the air, clear, sharp, undeniable. "If we push the zoning issue hard enough, he won't be able to fight it. People like him don't have the resources to take us to court." Gasps ripple through the crowd. Karen's face drains of color. I let the recording play. "It's about time that barn gets used for something that actually benefits the neighborhood. That property could be put to much better use if it wasn't under the wrong ownership."
Silence.
A heavy, loaded silence. Karen's mouth opens, but no words come out. I turn the phone off and look her dead in the eye. "You were saying something about rules?" Her mask cracks. For the first time, I see panic in her eyes. She whirls on the construction crew. "Pack it up," she snaps. They hesitate. I said, "Pack it up." One by one, they start shutting down equipment. The foreman won't even look at her. The neighbors murmur. Some pull out their phones, recording. Others shake their heads, whispering. I step closer to Karen, lowering my voice just enough, so only she can hear. "You thought I wouldn't fight back." She grits her teeth. "You thought I wouldn't have proof." A muscle in her jaw twitches. I lean in just a little. "You thought I didn't have resources." She turns and storms off, her heels clicking against the pavement. She knows she's lost. But this is just the beginning. Karen Wilcox practically flees from my property, but the damage is already done to her. The murmurs in the crowd grow louder. Some neighbors glare at her retreating figure. Others shake their heads. A few pull out their phones, recording everything. The HOA president just got caught. But I'm not done. I turn to the construction crew, still standing around awkwardly. "You all heard her," I say. "This project is over. Get off my property." The foreman doesn't argue. He gives a stiff nod and motions for his crew to pack up. Within minutes, the bulldozer rumbles away and the last worker disappears down the road. I exhale slowly. One battle won. But the war isn't over. The next morning, my cousin Jalen calls me, excitement crackling in his voice. Malcolm, you might want to check the news. I grab my laptop, and there it is. A local news station picked up the video. The video. The one where Karen openly admits to targeting my property because I'm not part of the HOA. Where she implies people like me don't have the means to fight back. Where she exposes the HOA's pattern of pushing Black and Latino homeowners off their land. The headline? HOA President caught on record plotting land takeover. I let out a low whistle.
Damn.
Jalen chuckles. Damn is right. You just open the floodgates. By noon, the HOA office is in chaos. Neighbors are demanding explanations. The HOA board is scrambling for damage control. Karen? Nowhere to be found. But I'm not giving her the chance to hide. I gather every neighbor who's ever been harassed by the HOA. Mrs. Alvarez, who was fined thousands over a non-compliant garden fence. The Jeffersons, who had their driveway extension denied while white neighbors got theirs approved without issue. We march together into the HOA office. The receptionist looks like she wants to bolt. The board is currently. We're not leaving, I say. Call them in.
Now.
It doesn't take long. Within minutes, Karen is forced to appear. She looks like she hasn't slept. Dark circles under her eyes, hands gripping her clipboard so tight her knuckles turn white. But when she sees me, that same smug expression returns. I see you've brought an audience, she says, voice carefully controlled. I step forward holding on my phone. Want to explain this? I hit play. Again. Her words fill the office. People like him don't have the resources to take us to court. The HOA board shifts uncomfortably. Some of them glance at her, realization dawning. I turn to the board. How many of you knew about this? No one speaks. But the silence is damning. Karen stiffens. This is being taken out of context. That recording was illegally obtained, and... Actually, Jalen cuts in, stepping forward. This was recorded on private property where Malcolm had every legal right to document harassment. Karen's mouth snaps shut. Jalen smirks. And since you used HOA resources to target a homeowner based on race, that's a civil rights violation. A cold hush settles over the room. One of the board members, a gray-haired man with a stiff tie, clears his throat. Ms. Wilcox, is there truth to these claims? Karen's nostrils flare. This is ridiculous. Malcolm has been difficult from the start. Jalen folds his arms. Define difficult. She flounders. He refused to cooperate. He escalated. A new voice cuts her off. You tried to steal his land. Everyone turns. It's Mr. Peterson, one of the longest-standing residents in this community. White-haired, frail but sharp-eyed. He steps forward, cane tapping against the tile. I built my home here 40 years ago, he says. Before the HOA even existed. And I've watched you and your cronies push out every single Black and Latino family one by one. Karen's face turns ashen. You did it quietly, Peterson continues.
Fines.
Zoning disputes. Anonymous complaints. But this time, he shakes his head. You got greedy. And now everyone sees you for what you are. Murmurs ripple through the room. Agreement. Anger. Realization. The gray-haired board member turns to Karen. Ms. Wilcox, under these circumstances, I don't see how we can continue your presidency. What? Karen hisses. You're going to throw me under the bus? A woman on the board scoffs. Karen, you threw yourself. Karen snaps. This is my HOA, she shrieks. I built this. Not anymore. The board member stands. Effective immediately, you are removed from your position. Karen freezes. Her face crumples, shock, disbelief. She opens her mouth, then closes it. She lost. The neighbors start clapping. I turn, locking eyes with Karen one last time. Guess I wasn't so difficult after all. She storms out. And just like that, her world collapses. It takes less than 24 hours for Karen Wilcox's world to completely crumble. By the next morning, her face is plastered all over social media and the local news. HOA President ousted after racist land grab exposed. The footage of her sneering about people like me plays on repeat. And then comes the real fallout. Justice hits like a sledgehammer. The city zoning office announces a full audit of the HOA's past repossessions. Every shady land grab, every biased fine, every case of selective enforcement, they're all under review. Several wronged homeowners file lawsuits. Class action. Karen? She tries to lay low, but her smug face is too well known now. And then, the final blow. Jalen calls me that afternoon, his voice practically buzzing. "You're gonna love this," he says. Turns out the HOA wasn't just shady, they were fraudulent. Karen had been misappropriating funds. HOA dues meant for road maintenance?
Gone.
Fees collected for community improvements? Never used. She'd been skimming off the top for years.
And now?
She's under criminal investigation. By the end of the week, Karen Wilcox is arrested. The neighborhood awakens. After years of silence, the neighborhood finally speaks up. At the next HOA meeting, now under new leadership, residents demand change. Policies get rewritten. Homeowners wrongfully fined or harassed get their money back. The anonymous complaint system that allowed Karen to target people? Abolished. And my barn? Protected.
Permanently.
A personal victory. One evening, I stand outside looking at my land, the barn, the fields, my home. Jalen steps beside me. "Feels good, huh?" I nod. "Damn good." He smirks. "You made history, man. You didn't just save your land, you took down an entire corrupt system." I exhale, feeling the weight of it. "She thought she could erase me," I say quietly. "Like we were never here." Jalen nods. "But you proved we belong." I glance up at the barn, my grandfather's initials still carved into the old wooden beams. They tried to erase our history, but it's still standing, and it always will be. I turn to Jalen, a slow grin spreading. "You ever seen a Karen get taken down by a bunch of roosters?"
He bursts out laughing.
"Man, I will never forget that."
Neither will I.
And neither will this town.